The future is not a mystery when God is involved. What feels uncertain to you has already been seen, shaped, and secured by the one who stands outside of time. While the world is anxious about tomorrow, heaven is already working on your destiny. Every step you take into 2026 is not accidental, not random, not forgotten. You are walking into a season that has been planned by God long before you ever prayed your first prayer, cried your first tear, or dreamed your first dream. Your life is not drifting. It is being directed. There are moments when it feels like life is standing still. You may look around and wonder why doors have not opened yet, why prayers seem unanswered, why progress feels slow. But delay is not denial. Silence is not absence. Waiting is not wasted time. God does some of his deepest work in the hidden places where no one is applauding you, no one is watching you, and no one is affirming you. Roots grow in darkness before fruit ever appears in the light. If you feel unseen, unrecognized, and overlooked, you are exactly where God often builds greatness. Your future is not drifting in uncertainty or floating in chance. It is anchored in the eternal wisdom of God. Long before you were aware of your purpose, before you ever understood your calling, before you even recognized the direction your life would take, God had already written a plan filled with hope, meaning, and destiny. Every season you walk through, whether joyful or painful, visible or hidden, fits into a divine blueprint that cannot be broken by human weakness, mistakes, or delays. When you truly understand that your future is already planned by God, fear begins to lose its grip on your heart and faith begins to rise with confidence. Many people struggle with anxiety because they feel responsible for controlling tomorrow. They worry about whether opportunities will come, whether doors will open, whether their efforts will be enough to create success. But when you trust that God has already prepared your path, you learn to rest instead of panic, to trust instead of striving, to walk in peace instead of pressure. God does not react to circumstances. He designs outcomes. What surprises you never surprises him. When something unexpected happens in your life, it may shock your emotions, but it never disrupts God's purpose. He already knows how every chapter will unfold and how every challenge will strengthen you. Waiting seasons often feel like wasted seasons. You may pray, work, and hope, yet nothing seems to move. But in God's economy, waiting is never idle. It is during these quiet moments that roots grow deep, faith matures, and character is shaped. Just as a seed must remain hidden beneath the soil before it ever produces fruit, your life also requires hidden preparation before visible breakthrough. The delay you experience is not punishment, it is preparation. God is aligning people, timing, resources, and circumstances in ways you cannot see yet. When the moment is right, what seems slow will suddenly accelerate. Sometimes God allows doors to close that you wanted desperately to stay open. At first, it feels like rejection, loss, or failure. But often those closed doors are protection in disguise. God sees dangers you would have walked into unknowingly, distractions that could have delayed your destiny, and compromises that could have weakened your calling. When you trust that your future is planned by God, you learn not to mourn every closed door, but to trust that something better is being prepared ahead. What feels like a setback may actually be a divine redirection. Your past cannot cancel God's future for your life. Mistakes, wrong decisions, missed opportunities, and seasons of weakness do not disqualify you from God's plan. Grace restores what failure tries to steal. God is not limited by your history. He redeems it. He uses even your broken moments to build wisdom, humility, and compassion within you. When you surrender your past to God, he transforms it into a testimony that strengthens your future. Trusting that your future is already planned by God also changes how you respond to fear. Fear thrives in uncertainty and feeds on imagination. It paints pictures of worst-case scenarios and convinces you that disaster is inevitable. But faith anchors you in the truth that God's intentions toward you are good, purposeful, and filled with hope. You may not know how everything will unfold, but you know who holds the future. That knowledge becomes your stability in every storm. There will be moments when the path ahead feels unclear. You may not see the full picture or understand the next step, but God rarely reveals the entire journey at once. He invites you to trust him one step at a time. Obedience unlocks clarity. When you move forward in faith, God illuminates the next direction. He builds confidence through consistent dependence on him. Your responsibility is not to control the future, but to remain faithful in the present. Knowing that God has planned your future also frees you from comparison. You do not need to compete with anyone else's timeline, success, or calling. Your journey is uniquely designed for you. What God is doing in another person's life does not diminish what he is doing in yours. When you embrace your own path, you find peace instead of pressure and gratitude instead of frustration. Every prayer you pray matters. Every tear you cry is seen. Every struggle you face has meaning beyond what you can perceive. God is weaving all of it together into a story that reflects his glory and your growth. Even when circumstances seem chaotic, heaven is organized. Even when your emotions feel unstable, God's purpose remains steady. Your future is not fragile. It is secure in the hands of a faithful God who cannot fail. When you truly believe that your future is already planned by God, your mindset shifts. You become courageous instead of fearful, patient instead of anxious, hopeful instead of discouraged. You stop rushing what God is refining. You stop forcing doors that God has not opened. You learn to trust the process, honor the season you are in, and walk forward with confidence. Your life becomes less about control and more about surrender, less about pressure and more about peace. No matter where you are today, confused, waiting, rebuilding, dreaming, or healing, your future remains intact in God's hands. What lies ahead is not random. It is intentional. It is purposeful. It is filled with divine guidance, supernatural provision, and faithful love. When you step into tomorrow with trust instead of fear, you align your heart with the eternal plan that has always been working on your behalf. True success is not measured only by what you achieve, accumulate, or display outwardly. It is measured by how closely your life aligns with the will, character, and direction of God. Many people chase achievements, promotions, recognition, and visible results, believing that reaching those milestones will finally bring fulfillment and peace. Yet even after accomplishing much, the heart can remain restless if it is not aligned with God's purpose. Alignment matters more than achievement because when your heart is in the right place with God, everything you build stands on a firm foundation. It is possible to climb quickly and still climb in the wrong direction. A person can be busy, productive, and admired, yet spiritually disconnected and emotionally empty. Achievement without alignment often produces exhaustion instead of joy, pressure instead of peace, and pride instead of humility. When your goals are driven only by ambition rather than obedience, you may reach destinations that God never intended for you to occupy. Alignment ensures that your steps are guided by wisdom rather than impulse, by purpose rather than pressure. God is not impressed by external success if the inner life is neglected. He looks at motives, attitudes, and surrender. A heart that seeks God's will consistently will naturally walk into the right opportunities at the right time. When your desires align with his desires, you begin to want what he wants, pursue what he values, and release what he does not bless. This alignment brings clarity in decisions, peace in waiting, and confidence in movement. Many frustrations in life come from being slightly misaligned. A small misalignment over time creates a large distance from the intended destination. Just like a vehicle that is slightly out of alignment will eventually drift off course, a life that ain't end. Or's spiritual alignment can slowly move away from God's purpose without realizing it. Prayer, reflection, obedience, and humility constantly realign the heart so that direction remains accurate and intentional. God often delays visible success, not because he is withholding blessings, but because he is shaping the inner foundation. If a person receives promotion without preparation, influence without integrity, or resources without wisdom, the blessing can become a burden. God prepares you before he releases what you are praying for. He develops patience, maturity, discernment, and faith so that when the opportunity comes, you can steward it well. Alignment protects you from self-destruction and preserves long-term impact. Alignment also teaches you to trust God's timing instead of rushing outcomes. When you are aligned, you understand that waiting is not wasting. You become content in growth seasons and faithful in small responsibilities. You stop forcing doors and start trusting divine openings. You learn to say no to good opportunities that are not God opportunities. Discernment becomes more valuable than speed. A heart aligned with God is sensitive to correction. It allows conviction to guide decisions and humility to shape responses. Instead of defending ego, an aligned heart seeks transformation. Growth happens when you are willing to adjust attitudes, forgive quickly, learn continuously, and remain teachable. Alignment keeps pride from controlling progress and keeps obedience central to direction. Alignment brings peace even when circumstances are uncertain. When your heart is settled in God's will, you are not easily shaken by temporary setbacks or delayed outcomes. You understand that progress is not always visible immediately, but spiritual growth is always happening internally. Confidence flows from knowing that your life is moving in the right direction even when results have not yet manifested. When alignment becomes your priority, comparison loses its power. You no longer measure success by other people's achievements because you are focused on faithfulness to your own calling. You celebrate others without jealousy and remain grounded in your own assignment. Contentment grows when you trust that God's plan for you is unique and perfectly tailored to your journey. Alignment also strengthens relationships. When your values are rooted in God's truth, you build connections that sharpen your faith instead of weakening it. You avoid environments that compromise your growth and pursue relationships that encourage integrity, accountability, and spiritual maturity. Your inner alignment influences your outer associations. A life aligned with God learns to surrender control. Instead of manipulating outcomes, you learn to trust divine direction. You release anxiety and embrace peace. You understand that obedience is more powerful than strategy and faith is stronger than fear. God guides those who listen, follow, and submit their plans to His wisdom. Achievement without alignment may bring applause, but alignment brings fulfillment. Success without alignment may build platforms, but alignment builds character. Recognition without alignment may inflate ego, but alignment nurtures humility and gratitude. When your inner world is aligned with God, your outer world begins to reflect stability, purpose, and authentic impact. Every season offers opportunities to realign. Life constantly invites adjustments. Challenges refine perspective. Delays teach patience. Disappointments expose misplaced expectations. Victories remind you of God's faithfulness. Alignment is not a one-time decision, but a daily posture of surrender and obedience. When you seek alignment above achievement, you walk in peace instead of pressure, purpose instead of panic, and clarity instead of confusion. You stop chasing approval and start pursuing obedience. You stop measuring worth by outcomes and start measuring faithfulness by obedience. Your life becomes less about proving and more about becoming. Alignment ensures that when blessings arrive, they strengthen rather than strain you. It ensures that influence does not corrupt your heart. It ensures that success does not steal your dependence on God. It keeps your identity rooted in truth rather than performance. A heart aligned with God becomes a vessel of stability, wisdom, and compassion. It reflects God's character in everyday decisions, relationships, and responses. Over time, alignment produces a life that is not only successful, but meaningful, not only productive, but peaceful, not only admired, but deeply fulfilled. Nothing in your life is accidental when it is surrendered to God. Every season, every delay, every challenge, and every hidden moment is shaping something greater within you. The promise you are believing for does not suddenly appear fully formed. It is built slowly through the process that God allows you to walk through. Many people desire the outcome, but resist the journey, yet it is the journey that develops the strength, wisdom, and character needed to sustain the blessing. When you understand that the process builds the promise, you stop fighting the season you are in and start learning from it. The process often feels uncomfortable because growth stretches you beyond what is familiar. Comfort zones feel safe, but they rarely produce transformation. God uses unfamiliar territory to teach trust, patience, and perseverance. When plans do not unfold the way you expected, it forces you to depend on God rather than your own understanding. This dependence deepens your faith and sharpens your spiritual maturity. What feels like inconvenience today may be preparing you for influence tomorrow. Hidden seasons are especially powerful. Much of God's work happens where no applause exists. You may feel unseen, underappreciated, or overlooked, but these quiet seasons are shaping your foundation. Just as a building requires deep underground work Re-rising visibly, your inner life must be strengthened before external expansion occurs. Character must be developed before responsibility increases. Integrity must be established before influence grows. Faith must be rooted before visibility multiplies. The process also exposes weaknesses that need healing. God does not reveal flaws to shame you, but to restore you. Impatience, fear, pride, insecurity, and doubt often surface when pressure is applied. These moments become opportunities for transformation. Instead of running from discomfort, God invites you to allow Him to reshape your heart. Growth is not always pleasant, but it is always purposeful. Many people become discouraged because progress feels slow. They expect immediate results and visible breakthroughs, but most meaningful growth happens gradually. Just as seeds take time to grow beneath the soil before they emerge, your obedience and faith are producing results, even when you cannot see them yet. Consistency matters more than speed. Faithfulness in small steps builds momentum over time. When you trust the process, you stay steady instead of quitting prematurely. The process teaches humility. It reminds you that strength comes from God, not from personal ability alone. When success arrives slowly, gratitude grows deeper. When struggles refine you, compassion increases. You become more patient with others because you recognize how patient God has been with you. Humility protects your heart from pride and keeps our dependence on God intact. Trials are not meant to destroy you. They are designed to develop you. Resistance builds endurance. Pressure strengthens resolve. Challenges sharpen discernment. When adversity comes, it reveals what is anchored inside you. Faith becomes real when it is tested. Hope becomes durable when it survives disappointment. Courage becomes authentic when it confronts fear. The process also teaches obedience. Sometimes God asks you to take steps that do not immediately make sense. Obedience builds spiritual sensitivity and trust. Every act of obedience strengthens your alignment with God's direction. Over time, you learn to hear His voice more clearly and respond more confidently. Obedience may not always feel comfortable, but it always moves you closer to purpose. One of the greatest dangers is attempting to shortcut the process. Shortcuts often bypass character development and produce fragile success. What grows too fast often lacks stability. God's timing protects you from being overwhelmed by responsibilities you are not yet ready to handle. Waiting seasons stretch your capacity so that when the promise arrives, you can steward it wisely. The process also reshapes perspective. You learn to measure success differently. Instead of focusing only on outcomes, you begin to value growth, obedience, maturity, and consistency. You recognize that becoming the right person matters more than reaching the right place. Your identity becomes rooted in who you are, becoming, not just what you accomplish. Every step in the process builds resilience. Setbacks teach adaptability. Failures teach wisdom. Delays teach patience. Unexpected detours teach flexibility. These lessons strengthen your emotional and spiritual stability. You become less shaken by change and more confident in God's guidance. The process strengthens trust in God's faithfulness. When you look back and see how God carried you through previous seasons, your confidence in His future guidance increases. Testimonies are formed through endurance, not convenience. Each challenge you overcome becomes evidence that God is working even when circumstances are difficult. When you embrace the process, you stop viewing struggles as obstacles and start seeing them as opportunities for growth. You stop rushing seasons and start honoring what each season is producing within you. You learn to celebrate small victories and appreciate incremental progress. The promise you are moving toward requires the maturity the process produces. Influence requires integrity. Blessing requires stewardship. Opportunity requires responsibility. God's preparation ensures sustainability. Without proper preparation, success can become overwhelming rather than fulfilling. As you continue walking through your journey, trust that every step is shaping you. Nothing is wasted. Every prayer, every sacrifice, every lesson learned contributes to the future God is building. Even when the path feels unclear, the process is still working in your favor. When you allow the process to shape you, you grow into a stronger, wiser, more compassionate version of yourself. You develop endurance, patience, humility, and faith that cannot be easily shaken. The promise you are believing for becomes not just something you receive, but something you are fully prepared to sustain and steward with excellence. The process may be slow, uncomfortable, and unpredictable at times, but it is always purposeful. God is building something far greater than what you can currently see. Trust the shaping. Honor the journey. Remain faithful in the season you are in. What God is preparing you for is worth every step of the process. Faith is not passive. It is not simply believing something in your mind while remaining motionless in your actions. True faith moves before proof appears. It steps forward before clarity fully forms. It trusts God's voice more than visible evidence. Many people wait until every detail is explained, every risk is eliminated, and every outcome is guaranteed before they act. But God often invites you to move while uncertainty still exists. This is how faith grows, by trusting what you cannot yet see. Fear always demands proof before obedience. It wants guarantees, safety, and full control. Fear magnifies risk and minimizes possibility. It replays past failures and imagines future disasters. But fear cannot create progress. It only preserves comfort. Faith, on the other hand, operates on trust rather than sight. It believes that God is faithful even when circumstances are unclear. It moves forward knowing that God will provide direction step by step. When God speaks into your heart, he rarely reveals the entire journey. He gives just enough light for the next step. If he showed everything at once, fear might overwhelm you or pride might mislead you. God builds dependence by requiring trust. Each obedience step unlocks further clarity. Movement creates momentum. Obedience activates provision. When you step out in faith, resources, wisdom, and opportunities begin to align. Waiting for perfect conditions often becomes an excuse for inactivity. There will always be reasons to delay, doubts to entertain, and risks to analyze. But growth requires courage. Faith grows when stretched. Muscles strengthen under resistance. Confidence increases when action is taken. The more you practice obedience, the stronger your faith becomes. Many people miss divine opportunities because fear speaks louder than faith. Fear tells you that you are not ready, not qualified, not capable. Faith reminds you that God equips those he calls. You may feel inadequate, but God's strength operates best through surrendered weakness. You do not need to have everything figured out before you begin. You simply need to trust the one who leads you. Faith also requires letting go of control. Control wants predictability and security. Faith surrenders outcomes to God. This does not mean acting recklessly, but acting obediently. Wisdom partners with faith to guide decisions, but obedience must not be delayed by excessive analysis. There comes a point where you must trust God more than your logic. Every breakthrough in life begins with a step of faith. New seasons require new obedience. New growth demands new courage. Staying in familiar territory may feel safe, but it often limits expansion. God invites you to grow beyond comfort into calling. Discomfort becomes a doorway to development. Faith challenges your identity. It forces you to see yourself not only as you are, but as God is shaping you to become. When you step forward in faith, you begin to align your self-perception with God's perspective. You stop defining yourself by past limitations and start embracing future possibilities. Fear often disguises itself as wisdom. It sounds reasonable, logical, and cautious. But when caution prevents obedience, it becomes limitation. Faith discerns the difference between wisdom and fear. Wisdom protects, fear restricts. Wisdom guides, fear paralyzes. Small steps of faith produce long-term transformation. You do not need massive leaps to begin. Simple obedience builds confidence. Consistent trust produces growth. Every small victory strengthens spiritual courage and deepens dependence on God. Faith also reshapes your relationship with failure. Instead of viewing mistakes as proof of inadequacy, you begin to see them as lessons in growth. Failure becomes feedback, rather defeat. God uses missteps to refine discernment and strengthen resilience. When faith leads, fear loses authority over your decisions. Faith creates alignment with divine timing. You learn to move when God prompts rather than when circumstances feel perfect. Obedience positions you for divine favor. Delay often delays destiny. Movement unlocks momentum. Your spiritual sensitivity increases as you practice faith. You become more aware of God's guidance, more confident in his direction, and more peaceful in uncertainty. Trust matures through experience, not theory. When fear tries to dominate your thoughts, faith anchors your heart in truth. It reminds you that God's plans are good, that his promises are reliable, and that his presence is constant. Faith does not eliminate challenges, but it empowers you to face them with courage. Stepping forward in faith often inspires others. Your obedience becomes a testimony that encourages others to trust God. Courage multiplies when modeled. Faith becomes contagious. Faith is not reckless optimism. It is confident trust, grounded in God's character. It acknowledges risk, but refuses to be ruled by it. It embraces uncertainty while trusting divine faithfulness. When you move in faith, you experience God in new dimensions. Dependence deepens relationship. Obedience strengthens intimacy. Trust builds spiritual maturity. Your comfort zone may feel secure, but your calling lies beyond it. Growth requires movement. Faith opens doors. Fear keeps closed. As you continue to walk forward, remember that faith is built through action. Each step strengthens confidence. Each obedience increases clarity. Each surrender deepens trust. When faith leads, fear fades. When trust rises, doubt diminishes. When obedience becomes your lifestyle, God's guidance becomes clearer. You discover that the greatest adventures of purpose begin not with certainty, but with courage. Destiny is not shaped in one dramatic moment, but through the quiet consistency of daily choices. What you repeatedly do becomes who you eventually become. Discipline is the bridge between intention and transformation. Without discipline, even the strongest desires remain unrealized. With discipline, small actions compound into powerful results over time. Your future responds not only to what you pray for, but to what you consistently practice. Many people desire change, growth, breakthrough, and success, yet they resist the structure required to sustain those outcomes. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, but in reality, it is protection and empowerment. It creates order where chaos once existed and clarity where confusion once reigned. Discipline strengthens focus, builds momentum, and develops resilience. It transforms good intentions into tangible progress. Spiritual discipline shapes inner stability. Consistent prayer sharpens discernment and deepens dependence on God. Regular reflection renews perspective and strengthens wisdom. Intentional time in spiritual growth aligns the heart with divine purpose. These habits cultivate spiritual sensitivity and clarity in decision-making. When discipline governs your spiritual life, peace increases and confusion diminishes. Mental discipline protects your thought life. What you allow into your mind shapes your emotions, beliefs, and actions. Guarding thoughts prevents fear, negativity, and distraction from dominating your perspective. Replacing destructive thinking with truth strengthens confidence and clarity. A disciplined mind remains focused on purpose rather than being scattered by constant distractions. Emotional discipline strengthens resilience. It teaches you to respond rather than react. Instead of being controlled by impulse, frustration, or fear, discipline empowers you to remain steady under pressure. It develops patience, emotional intelligence, and wisdom in relationships. When emotions are disciplined, peace becomes sustainable even in challenging seasons. Physical discipline builds energy and endurance. Healthy habits improve focus, productivity, and long-term strength. Stewarding your body supports your ability to serve, grow, and sustain purpose. Consistency in rest, movement, and care enhances overall effectiveness. Financial discipline develops stewardship and responsibility. Wise management creates stability and freedom. Discipline prevents impulsive decisions that undermine long-term growth. Financial consistency builds trust, margin, and opportunity. Relational discipline protects boundaries. Healthy boundaries preserve energy, clarity, and integrity. Discipline teaches when to say yes and when to say no. It protects your time, focus, and emotional health. It strengthens alignment with purpose and prevents unnecessary distractions. Discipline also builds momentum. Small daily actions accumulate into measurable progress. Consistency outperforms intensity. Breakthroughs often result from persistent obedience rather than dramatic effort. Faithfulness in small things prepares capacity for greater responsibility. Resistance is part of discipline. Growth always requires discomfort. Discipline trains you to overcome resistance rather than submit to it. Each time you choose discipline over convenience, strength increases. Willpower strengthens through practice. Discipline becomes easier with repetition. Delayed gratification is a powerful discipline. Choosing long-term growth over immediate pleasure builds maturity and stability. It protects from impulsive decisions that sabotage future success. Learning to wait strengthens patience and discernment. Discipline produces clarity. Structure creates focus. Order reduces stress. Organization increases efficiency. A disciplined lifestyle reduces chaos and increases productivity. Discipline also strengthens integrity. Consistent values produce trustworthy character. Reliability builds credibility. Integrity sustains influence. Discipline builds confidence. Ping commitments to yourself strengthen self-respect. Progress reinforces motivation. Achievement becomes sustainable rather than temporary. Discipline aligns behavior with vision. Vision provides direction. Discipline provides execution. Without discipline, vision remains theoretical. Discipline converts intention into reality. Growth requires sacrifice. Discipline often demands choosing what is necessary over what is comfortable. But sacrifice produces reward. Temporary discomfort yields long-term benefit. Discipline strengthens faith. Obedience practiced daily deepens trust. Faith grows through consistency rather than occasional effort. Discipline protects from distraction. Focus sharpens purpose. Clarity increases productivity. Discipline develops leadership. Responsibility grows through consistent behavior. Discipline strengthens resilience. Stability increases through routine. Discipline establishes momentum. Progress compounds through repetition. Discipline empowers self-control. Freedom increases through structure. Discipline refines excellence. Quality improves through consistency. Discipline nurtures wisdom. Experience accumulates through repetition. Discipline shapes destiny through daily decisions. When discipline becomes a lifestyle, transformation becomes inevitable. Consistency produces confidence. Structure produces stability. Faithfulness produces favor. Discipline becomes the foundation for sustainable success and meaningful impact. Your future responds to what you repeatedly practice. What you feed grows. What you neglect weakens. Discipline directs energy toward purpose rather than distraction. Destiny is shaped quietly through daily obedience. Small choices create massive outcomes over time. Discipline empowers you to become the person your future requires. Stepping into a new season always requires releasing what no longer belongs in your next chapter. Growth demands separation from habits, mindsets, relationships, and patterns that once felt familiar but now limit your progress. You cannot carry old baggage into new destiny. What once sustained you may now restrain you. God often calls you forward while simultaneously calling you to let go. This release is not loss, it is alignment. Many people desire change but resist the discomfort of transition. Holding on to what feels safe can quietly prevent what is necessary. Familiarity creates comfort, but comfort does not always produce growth. God invites you into expansion, but expansion requires space. If your hands are full of yesterday's burdens, you cannot receive tomorrow's blessings. Letting go creates capacity for new opportunities, clarity, and transformation. Old mindsets are often the first things that must be released. Negative thinking, fear-based assumptions, self-doubt, and limiting beliefs shape behavior and expectations. These internal patterns silently dictate decisions. You may have learned them through past disappointments, failures, or trial, but what once protected you may now restrict you. Renewal begins when you challenge outdated thinking and allow truth to reshape perspective. A renewed mind creates a renewed future. Unhealthy habits also demand release. Patterns of procrastination, compromise, distraction, and inconsistency sabotage momentum. Habits shape identity over time. Breaking old cycles requires intentional discipline and patience. Change may feel uncomfortable initially, but consistency creates freedom. Letting go of destructive habits protects long-term growth. Relationships sometimes need adjustment as well. Not everyone who walked with you in one season is meant to continue into the next. Some relationships encourage growth while others reinforce stagnation. Releasing unhealthy connections is not about rejection, but protection. Alignment attracts supportive environments that strengthen faith, vision, and integrity. Boundaries preserve purpose. Emotional baggage often travels silently into new seasons if not addressed. Unforgiveness, resentment, regret, and disappointment drain energy and cloud judgment. Carrying unresolved pain limits emotional capacity. Healing begins with surrender and forgiveness. Letting go frees your heart to receive joy, peace, and clarity. Emotional freedom strengthens decision-making and relational health. Fear must also be released. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of uncertainty can quietly dictate choices. Fear narrows perspective and limits potential. Courage grows when fear is confronted rather than avoided. Letting go of fear empowers forward movement. Faith thrives in surrender. Control is another barrier to growth. Control seeks predictability and certainty. Faith invites trust and dependence. Releasing control allows divine guidance to lead. Trust deepens when outcomes are surrendered. Peace increases when anxiety releases its grip. Letting go of control strengthens spiritual maturity. Comfort zones must be left behind. Comfort provides security but limits expansion. Growth requires unfamiliar territory. Discomfort signals development. Staying comfortable often prevents discovery of full potential. Letting go of comfort opens pathways to purpose. Old identities sometimes need adjustment. You may still see yourself through the lens of past mistakes, limitations, or labels. Growth requires embracing who you are becoming rather than who you were. Letting go of outdated identity strengthens confidence and vision. Letting go requires faith. It often feels risky because it involves uncertainty, but holding on to what God is asking you to release delays growth. Obedience unlocks freedom. Trust builds peace. The process of release can feel painful. Change involves grief. Even healthy transitions require adjustment. But pain and growth produces strength, clarity, and maturity. Resistance prolongs discomfort. Surrender accelerates healing. Letting go creates space for new relationships, new habits, new thinking, new opportunities, and new purpose. Expansion requires margin. Freedom allows movement. Release does not mean forgetting lessons. Wisdom remains. Experience informs future decisions. But emotional attachment to old patterns must dissolve. Letting go aligns you with divine timing. When you release what no longer serves you, clarity increases. Direction becomes sharper. Momentum increases. Spiritual maturity grows through surrender. Obedience deepens trust. Faith strengthens confidence. When you let go, you discover that God fills the space with peace, clarity, provision, and growth. He never removes without replacing with something greater. Release leads to renewal. Letting go also increases gratitude. You become aware of growth. Appreciation increases, perspective shifts. Release strengthens resilience. Flexibility increases, adaptability grows. Letting go invites transformation. Identity matures, vision expands, growth demands courage. Courage grows through surrender. Letting go is not weakness, it is wisdom. It demonstrates trust in God's direction. It opens doors to new possibilities. Your next season requires lighter hands, open heart, renewed mind, and courageous faith. Holding on to what is familiar may feel safe, but releasing it unlocks destiny. Freedom follows surrender. Growth follows obedience. Clarity follows release. When you release what cannot go with you, you step fully into what God has prepared for you. Pressure has a way of revealing what truly lives inside a person. When life becomes uncomfortable, uncertain, or demanding, the hidden strengths, weaknesses, beliefs, and attitudes surface. Many people see pressure as punishment or failure, but pressure is often the pathway to growth. God does not waste difficult seasons. He uses them to refine character, deepen faith, and strengthen purpose. What feels heavy today may be shaping the strength you will need tomorrow. Every challenge carries a lesson. Resistance develops endurance. Obstacles sharpen focus. Delays cultivate patience. Disappointment refines expectations. When everything flows easily, growth remains limited. Comfort rarely produces transformation. It is during stretching seasons that maturity accelerates. Pressure trains you to rely on God rather than your own strength. Dependence deepens trust and builds spiritual resilience. Pressure also clarifies priorities. When resources feel limited or time feels tight, you begin to recognize what truly matters. Distractions lose their appeal. Superficial concerns fade. Focus sharpens on purpose, values, and integrity. Pressure simplifies life by revealing what deserves your energy and what does not. This clarity strengthens decision-making and direction. Faith matures under pressure. Trust becomes real when it is tested. Belief deepens when circumstances challenge comfort. Hope becomes durable when expectations are delayed. Courage strengthens when fear must be confronted. Each trial stretches spiritual capacity. In D of weakening faith, pressure often strengthens it when surrendered to God. Pressure builds emotional strength. It teaches resilience, adaptability, and patience. You learn how to remain steady when emotions fluctuate. You develop the ability to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Emotional maturity grows through experience and endurance. Pressure reveals emotional patterns that need healing and growth. Character is refined through pressure. Integrity is tested when shortcuts appear tempting. Humility grows when limitations become visible. Compassion increases when suffering creates empathy. Patience develops when outcomes take time. Leadership matures when responsibility increases. Pressure reveals whether values remain consistent under stress. Pressure also produces wisdom. Experience teaches discernment. Mistakes refine judgment. Challenges sharpen perspective. Lessons learned through hardship become lasting wisdom. Comfort may inform knowledge, but difficulty produces understanding. Wisdom grows when reflection follows experience. Many people try to escape pressure prematurely. They avoid discomfort, retreat from challenges, and resist growth. But escaping pressure often delays development. Growth requires endurance. Avoidance weakens resilience. Facing pressure with faith strengthens capacity. Endurance builds confidence. Pressure creates spiritual sensitivity. It drives prayer, humility, and dependence. It increases awareness of God's presence and guidance. Gratitude deepens when provision is experienced during difficulty. Trust grows when God sustains through uncertainty. Pressure also prepares you for future responsibility. Increased influence requires emotional stability, discernment, humility, and wisdom. Without preparation, success can overwhelm. Pressure strengthens internal capacity to sustain external growth. Every season of pressure carries hidden preparation. What feels uncomfortable may be equipping you for greater impact. Skills develop through challenge. Leadership strengthens through responsibility. Vision sharpens through adversity. Pressure builds perseverance. Quitting becomes less appealing when endurance strengthens. Commitment deepens when obstacles are overcome. Confidence increases through survival and growth. Pressure reveals identity. You discover what truly defines you. You learn where your confidence originates. You identify areas that require growth. Identity strengthens through refinement. Pressure also produces gratitude. Appreciation increases for stability, peace, and growth. Perspective matures through contrast. Pressure invites surrender. Control diminishes. Trust increases. Dependence deepens. Growth under pressure creates authenticity. Faith becomes experiential rather than theoretical. Confidence becomes grounded rather than fragile. Pressure also strengthens discipline. Structure becomes necessary. Focus increases. Consistency becomes essential. Pressure develops courage. Fear loses authority through repeated confrontation. Boldness increases. Pressure shapes leadership. Responsibility strengthens maturity. Accountability increases integrity. Pressure builds empathy. Compassion grows through experience. Understanding deepens. Pressure sharpens purpose. Vision clarifies, direction strengthens. Pressure strengthens community. Support systems become valuable. Relationships deepen. Pressure builds gratitude. Perspective broadens. Humility increases. Pressure is not designed to break you. It is designed to build you. Resistance strengthens capacity. Strain produces endurance. Challenge develops wisdom. What you survive strengthens you. What you endure shapes you. What you overcome prepares you. Instead of fearing pressure, embrace it as a teacher. Allow it to refine your mindset, strengthen your character, deepen your faith, and sharpen your purpose. Growth emerges from resistance. Strength emerges from struggle. Wisdom emerges from experience. Pressure does not define you, it develops you. It shapes your future by strengthening your present. When you surrender pressure to God, it becomes preparation rather than punishment. It transforms weakness into strength, uncertainty into trust, fear into courage, and struggle into growth. Your greatest development often happens in your hardest seasons. Pressure is the training ground for purpose. Expectation has the power to shape experience. What you anticipate often determines how you interpret what unfolds in your life. When your expectations are rooted in fear, disappointment becomes familiar and hope remains limited. But when your expectations are anchored in faith, possibility expands and courage rises. Expecting great things from God is not arrogance. It is trust in his character, his promises, and his faithfulness. A hopeful expectation opens your heart to receive what God desires to release into your life. Many people hesitate to expect because past disappointments have taught them to protect themselves emotionally. They lower expectations to avoid pain, but guarded expectation often blocks growth and joy. Faith requires vulnerability. It invites you to believe again, to hope again, and to trust again. Healing happens when you allow your heart to remain open despite previous wounds. God restores confidence in his goodness when you step forward with renewed expectation. Expectation influences behavior. When you expect progress, you prepare for growth. When you expect opportunity, you remain alert to possibility. When you expect favor, gratitude increases. When you expect breakthrough, perseverance strengthens. Expectation aligns attitude with purpose. It fuels motivation and consistency. It energizes faith. Doubt limits reception. Fear narrows vision. Low expectation creates passive living, but faith-driven expectation activates courage. It empowers bold prayer, confident obedience, and joyful anticipation. Expectation creates momentum. Expectation L's. O shapes language. Words reflect belief. Speaking life reinforces hope. Positive confession strengthens mindset. When you speak faith, confidence increases. Language directs focus. Expectation aligns perspective. You interpret challenges differently when you expect growth. Obstacles become opportunities rather than threats. Delays become preparation rather than denial. Discomfort becomes development rather than defeat. Faith reframes difficulty. Expectation builds resilience. Hope sustains endurance. Anticipation strengthens perseverance. Confidence increases through trust. Optimism becomes stable when grounded in faith. Expectation invites gratitude. Appreciation increases for progress. Awareness sharpens for blessings. Perspective matures. Expectation nurtures joy. Anticipation produces energy. Gratitude multiplies happiness. Confidence stabilizes peace. Expectation strengthens patience. Trust increases tolerance for delay. Endurance deepens. Expectation strengthens courage. Confidence reduces fear. Faith empowers action. Expectation aligns with obedience. Faith motivates movement. Trust produces surrender. Expectation influences relationships. Hope spreads encouragement. Positivity strengthens connection. Expectation increases awareness of divine activity. Sensitivity sharpens. Discernment increases. Expectation strengthens prayer life. Boldness increases. Confidence deepens. Trust stabilizes. Expectation transforms mindset. Vision expands. Creativity increases. Possibility multiplies. Expectation strengthens emotional health. Optimism stabilizes mood. Hope counters anxiety. Expectation supports perseverance. Motivation sustains effort. Confidence maintains consistency. Expectation builds spiritual maturity. Trust deepens dependence. Faith strengthens alignment. Expectation honors God. Trust reflects reverence. Belief reflects confidence. Expectation invites fulfillment. Faith activates reception. Hope positions blessing. Expectation does not ignore reality. It interprets reality through faith. It acknowledges challenge while trusting purpose. It recognizes limitation while trusting provision. It faces uncertainty while trusting guidance. Expectation also requires humility. Trust does not manipulate outcome. Surrender respects divine timing. Patience protects peace. Expectation encourages growth. Faith motivates learning. Trust inspires discipline. Hope sustains effort. Expectation invites peace. Confidence stabilizes heart. Trust calms anxiety. Expectation expands generosity. Gratitude increases giving. Joy multiplies sharing. Expectation strengthens leadership. Vision clarifies direction. Confidence empowers influence. Expectation fuels perseverance. Hope sustains commitment. Trust stabilizes consistency. Expectation nurtures gratitude. Appreciation increases awareness. Expectation empowers transformation. Belief shapes identity. Confidence, strength. E has courage. Expectation cultivates vision. Possibility expands imagination. Faith directs creativity. Expectation sustains joy. Anticipation energizes spirit. Expectation strengthens discipline. Motivation maintains consistency. Expectation builds unity. Positivity spreads encouragement. Expectation nurtures resilience. Hope sustains endurance. Expectation activates purpose. Faith aligns action. Expectation protects peace. Trust stabilizes emotions. Expectation invites fulfillment. Faith receives promise. Expectation shapes destiny. Belief directs action. When you raise your expectations in faith, you invite God's possibilities into your daily reality. You stop living defensively and start living confidently. You move from survival to purpose, from hesitation to courage, from doubt to trust. Expectation transforms perspective, behavior, and experience. Trusting God's faithfulness allows you to anticipate goodness, even when circumstances feel uncertain. Your confidence is not based on perfect conditions, but on faithful promises. Hope becomes steady rather than fragile. When expectation rises, faith strengthens, courage increases, and obedience flows naturally. You begin to live with anticipation rather than anxiety. Your heart opens to receive growth, peace, clarity, and purpose. Expectation invites joy into the journey. It reminds you that God is active, present, and trustworthy. Belief fuels resilience. Trust stabilizes hope. Faith unlocks possibility. As you continue forward, allow expectation to shape your mindset, guide your choices, and strengthen your courage. Believe that good things are unfolding. Trust that growth is happening. Remain confident that God is faithful. Expectation prepares your heart for the future. Faith positions you for fulfillment. Trust sustains your journey. Your confidence in God's faithfulness shapes the quality of your life.